circles. First off, notice that we have the standard form for circles: x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. It looks a whole lot like the distance formula. And if you forgot the distance formula, it's something like this, depending on your textbook. It's very, very similar. Instead of a second x listed as an x and a y, we have a h and a k. Now h comma k, well, that's the center, and r is the radius of the circle. Now notice that the formula has an h, or minus h, and a minus k, but the actual center isn't negative h, negative k, it's positive h, positive k, and that means you will change the signs. To give you an idea of what this actually means is, let's say, for example, that we have a circle centered at 0, 0, and the radius is at 2, so that means we're going to attempt to freehand draw a circle with a radius of 2. Now what that is, if you take this point and this point, you can find the radius by using the distance formula, and that is the same distance all the way around, that same distance. By definition, the circle is the same distance from the center to the outside edge, no matter where you are in the circle. That's called the radius. And by the way, all the way across is called the diameter. So that's what this means. Let's do some examples. First one, we want to find the equation of the circle in standard form. Once again, this is standard form. So what we're going to do, we're going to use the standard form for a circle, which is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. Now we have a center, our center 2, negative 3, so that's our h and that's our k. And we're told that r is 5. So all we're going to do is substitute those numbers in. X minus h, h is 2. And then y minus k, k is a negative 3. Notice I have two negatives now. One's a subtraction from the formula, one's a negative from the given point. And r is 5. Now all we're going to do is just clean it up a little bit. I can't do anything with the x minus 2 squared, so I'm going to leave it like that. For the y minus negative 3, I'm going to make those both positive, because subtraction is the same as adding the opposite, or negative times a negative is a positive. And then 5 squared is 25. And that's the answer. Now let's look at this example, where we have the center 2, 3, and it's tangent to the x-axis. Once again, we're going to use the standard form for a circle. And we already have our h and our k, because that's what's given for our center. So we have x minus 2 squared plus y minus 3 squared. The only question is we need r, or r squared. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go to my graph. We're looking at the center 2, 3 and tangent to the x-axis. Tangent means it touches exactly once the x-axis. So let's go to 2, 3. Two, 3, and we're going to plot that, and then we're going to draw a circle. Keep in mind it says it's tangent to the x-axis, so I'm going to draw a circle that is tangent to the x-axis, which means it touches it once and only once. So I'm going to just come around here, Draw some circle. Not going to worry too much about being exact, just as long as it touches once on the x-axis. So, since it touches once on the x-axis, that means that my radius is distance from the center to the x-axis. That's where it touched. And if you look, the distance from there to there is 1, 2, 3. So that's my radius. Now note, if it were tangent to the y-axis, my radius would have been from the point to the y-axis, which would have been 2. But since it's tangent to the x-axis, my radius is 3. And that's what we're going to use for our r. 3. And we're pretty much done, except for squaring 3. 3 squared is 9. Let's do a few more examples. Having center 1, 0 and through 3, 4. Instead of going to the other graph, let's just use, well, let's draw a picture. The center is at 1, 0. We want it to go through 3, 4. So it's going to go through that point. 3, 4. So center is at 1, 0, and it goes through this point. So we got a circle that looks something like this. So once again, we're going to use x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. And once again, we already have the center. H is 1 and k is 0. So once we find r squared, we'll be done. Now here's what we're going to do to find r squared. See, this time I'm actually going to find r squared. You'll notice that I have this distance, which is the radius. And it goes through the point 1, 0 and 3, 4. So what I can do is, I've already used 1, 0. X, y can be this other point that we have that goes through that circle. So we're going to use that. Substitute for x and y. So now we have 3 minus 1 squared plus y is 4. 4 minus z squared, or 0 squared, equals r squared. Now I'm going to leave out some, well, yeah, I'm going to leave out some steps. Well, maybe I won't. 3 minus 1 is 2. And that becomes 2 squared. 4 minus 0 is 4. 4 squared equals r squared. Now 2 squared is the same as 4. And 4 squared is the same as 16. What that means is that we have 4 plus 16, which is 20. Now I don't want just r, I want r squared. So once I find r squared, I'm going to take that answer and I'm going to substitute it back in here. So what that means is we now have x minus 1 squared plus y minus 0 squared equals 20. And x minus 1 squared stays x minus 1 squared. Y minus 0 is just y, so that becomes y squared equals 20. And we're done with that problem. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this. Well, I'm going to try to anyway. I'm going to delete all this. So now we can do the next example. Remember, this is the video. You can always rewind it if you want to, if you need to. We're now going to do this example. In this example, we're looking at the diameter is at 2, 3, and then I'm going to cheat a little bit and call that a 10 and call that a 17. Put it right there. So this point is 2, 3, and this point is 10, 17. Now that's the endpoints of the diameter. So what that means is the circle goes through those two endpoints. Now what I need to find the equation of a circle, I need the center and I need the radius, or the r squared. To find the center, I'm going to use something called the midpoint formula. We're just going to call it this. What it basically is the average of your x values, comma, the average of the y values. This is a point, so we're going to have an x and a y in our final answer. So we're just going to take the two x values, 2 and 10. We're going to add those and divide by 2. And same thing with the y's. Take the 3 and the 17. Add and divide by 2. So 2 plus 10 is 12. 12 divided by 2 is 6. 3 plus 17 is 20. 20 divided by 2 is 10. So our center is 6, 2. 6, 10, I mean. Now what we're going to do, since we have our center, 6, 10, we can take either point and find the radius. I'm going to use this point because I think the numbers are smaller, maybe easier. 2, 3. So let's do 2, 3 and 6, 10. And we're going to use circle formula. A lot of books tell you to use the distance formula. This is a distance formula. This is going to save you a step. So I'm using 2, 3. That means the x is 2, and then my h is 6. Y is 3. K we found to be 10. Now I easily could have used 10, 17. It does not make a difference at all. So 2 minus 6 is negative 4. 3 minus 10 is negative 7. If you're using a graphing calculator, be really careful. Negative 4 squared is a positive 16. Negative 7 squared is positive 49. And 16 plus 49 is 65. And that's our r squared. Now all we need to do is substitute our hk and r squared into the standard formula. Remember, we found h to be 6 and k to be 10 because that's our center. So our final answer is x minus 6 squared plus y minus 10 squared, and r squared we found to be 65. That's our final answer. So to review, we use the midpoint formula to find the center, and then we use our circle formula or the distance formula to find r squared. Now this last example is where you're already given most of the information, and all you have to do is find the center and the radius. Since this is already in standard form, we know that's our h and that's our k. So our center is 2, 3. Now notice I changed the signs. Radius isn't 16, it's actually what do you square to get 16. So another way to think of it is what's the square root of 16? 4. The radius is 4. Now question B, you may want to think of it like this, but I'm just going to show you the way that I would do it. Now if I use a C, that means center. We know it's going to be a point, h, k. You don't see a number with the x being squared, so if you don't see a number, it's always a 0. Then with the y, you see a plus 5, but you always change the sign. And if you're wondering why that's what it is, it's because in standard form, it would actually be written like this. Got that? That's why it's 0, 5. And then our radius is not 11, it's y squared is 11. So another reason why I use a square root up there so you can see it here. It's a square root of 11. And then our last example, you gotta be a little bit careful with. This one is not in standard form. It's got an x and a y term that are actually in the way. So what we're going to have to do is complete the square on this one. In fact, we gotta do it twice. So what we're going to do, we're going to rewrite it, x squared, and then bring the minus 6x over. Leave some space, and put plus y squared plus 16y. Leave some space. And then I need that minus 8 to be on the right side because it's in the way. So I'm going to add 8 to both sides. Now what we're going to do to complete the square, if you remember how to complete the square, we're going to take half of b and square it. So in other words, for x squared minus 6x, we're going to take half of negative 6, and we're going to square that answer. So if you take half of negative 6, you do get negative 3. And when you square that, you get 9. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to add 9 here. Put a line underneath that so you know what we did. I'm going to add 9 here. Now we're going to do the same thing with the plus 16. We're going to take half of 16, which is 8, and 8 squared is 64. So I'm going to add 64 over here also. And then we're going to factor each one of these trinomials. This x squared minus 6x plus 9, if you remember how to factor, it's going to factor 2 sets of parentheses. And you're going to have the same thing in both of them. But I'm going to give you a little shortcut way. It's always going to be the x, and then it's going to be x plus or minus some number squared. Well, that number is always what's half of b. Well, half of b, in this case, negative 6 is negative 3. So that's how it factors. X minus 3 squared. Same thing over here with the y's. What's half of positive 16? Positive 8. So that's how it factors, y plus 8 squared. And then we're going to add 8 plus 9, 64. And I do believe that that is 81. And now we have our standard form. X minus 3 squared plus y plus 8 squared equals 81. What that means is our center is going to be, remember, change the sign. We have a 3 with the x, actually a negative 3, but we're going to change that sign. We have a plus 8 with the y, we're going to change that to negative 8. And then our radius is whatever we square to get 81, or the square root of 81, which is 9. And we are done.